Hello all, welcome back. So now in this series we will be deep dive into the VPC. VPC section includes the subnet, NAT gateways, internet gateways, and all of these things we'll cover it by one. So before that deep dive into the next part, we will see about the introduction of the VPC. Inside the introduction, we will be covering what is meant by VPC, CIDR range, then what is the public and private IP addresses, because these are the main important thing which will be a foundation for us to have the idea of what is meant by the VPC and how we can use the different resources inside the VPC. Now we'll also check about the security group use cases, and then we'll show the demo of how we can configure the VPC via AWS console. So now let us talk about the virtual private cloud. Okay. Now what does the virtual private cloud is mean that, so it is nothing but it's an isolated section of a cloud providers. Okay. So when I say isolated section, which means that we can define our own resources, we can define our own policies onto that, because with these resources the cloud provider don't have the access, only we will have the access. By use of the cloud provider, we will be provisioning the resources. That is why when you say the VPC as an isolated section, which is nothing but we can define and control our own resources. Okay, that is why they are calling as a isolated section of a cloud network providers. You can think it as a house or home where you live. Okay, now there are multiple houses in the town, in your town, but there are some certain policies and some configuration, some at your own house, right? So the same thing which applies this house and home to the VPC also. Now when we talk about the VPC, the second one, the major thing we'll have to look into it is the CI. The third one is the public and private IP addresses. Now whenever we are talking about the VPCs, this is the main and major concept that we will have to look into it, about the public and private address. So I'll just so what does mean by the public IP address? So public IP address is nothing but which can be accessible within the internet, within from the internet, because the public IP address, you can think it about like, uh, you can just go here and you can add the IP address to your Google and you will get the result. Okay, so this is nothing but a public IP address. And talking about the private IP address, private IP addresses only be accessible within the private network. Let's say you have your own company, right? And inside the company you have your own network. So this IP address, this can be only accessible within your network. It can't access from the world. That is the internet. From internet it can be accessed. So this is how we will configure the public as well as the private IP address. We'll deep dive into this, how we can configure the private IP addresses, how we can, even if we configure the instances on the private IP with the private IP addresses, how we can get access from the internet. So we'll think about and we'll do it. Part of the comparison of public and private IP address is uniqueness. Okay, so public IP address has to be unique. Now let's say you have created one application, right? You are deployed onto the EC2 instance, and this application is running the simple sample hello world. Okay, now if you want to access this web page within from the outsiders, what we can do, you can provide the custom IP address. Now what I can do, I can just add this IP address inside Google search. and then I can get redirected to the application that has been hosted. So this is what about the uniqueness. So whenever we are having or any if you want to have any use the application from the outside, we'll have to provide the unique IP address. So this is the comparison of the public and private IP address about the uniqueness. The private IP address are not unique, they can be reused across different networks. Now let's say your company, this is a company, we have the second company, so there are multiple things that company can use this private IP addresses. The purpose of public IP addresses is with the communicate with external networks. Whenever we are having the public IP address, now for public IP address we don't require the additional configuration, okay, because it is directly, that is why it is saying the purpose is the communicate with external networks, and the private IP address communication within a local or private network. The example of that public IP address is this 192.0.2.1. Private IP address is this. Now the public IP address, here's the important thing, that is the public IP address is assigned by the ISP or a cloud provider, because if you just check within your uh, if you want to, like as I already mentioned, right? So if you have the application and you want to get it, give the IP address, that will be the public one. So this, in this scenario, the AWS or any cloud provider adding this IP address. Okay, the scope of the public IP address is a global one, and the scope of the private IP address is local one. Correct. Now talking about the real-time example of the public IP address is, public IP address is your home's mailing address, and so your home number, home house number can be get easily identified with from the outsiders, like whoever is coming to your home, and they can easily get the number of house number and they can reach out to your. And for private IP address, it's like within your home there are 4 to 5 rooms inside your home, and you, if you want to tell anyone, like go to the second room, third room, right? So it's your internal one, so this is not been publicly accessible. Now talking about the security groups. So security groups are nothing but, let's say I have my application, okay, an application is hosted on any of the server. Now if I want to access this application from the internet, what I need to do, I'll have to have the IP address, okay, and I can use this IP address and I can get login to the server, or get into the server and do my job. But let's say you don't have any boundaries of the network or security from the outside to your EC2 instance or to your machine. Okay, now anyone can from the internet can check with this IP address and they can get logging to the servers. This is a very problematic situation for us to manage all of these things. That's why there comes the security group. So security group is nothing but it acts like a firewall between your public network to your provisioned services. Okay, now whenever we if you want to access within from the internet to your servers, we will have the inbound rules. Inside the inbound rule, what we will configure, let's say I just want to configure the 22 port from the given IP address, that is 30.0. Now if the request is coming from this IP address, then and then only I will get it enter into my system, otherwise I will reject it. So this is the main usage of security group. So for now we talked about the VPC, CIDR range, public and private IP addresses, and the security groups. Now just go to the VPC console and just check how we can configure the new VPC, and we'll also check the default VPC has been created. Okay, now just log into the console. Here you can search the VPC section. As we already mentioned, it is a isolated cloud resources. I'm just clicking on that VPC. There you'll see our VPC subnets. Will go step by step in the all of the given services or the resources that has been mentioned. Just now we'll check about the VPCs. Okay, so if you just check, this VPC has been already created by the AWS, which is having the VPC ID, and for each of the VPC we'll have the different VPC ID. Then we'll have the CIDR range that I already mentioned, that every cloud provider gives that CIDR range. Like inside that CIDR range you can provide and configure your resources or IP addresses. We'll check it, we'll go thoroughly inside the CIDR range with the subnets and all these things in the next video. Apart from that, it will also give the main network ACL, main routing table. Okay, now if I click on that VPC, there will see the resource map. Inside the resource map you will see the VPC. There are 3 subnets which are in the 3 different availability zones. They are connected with the single route tables and with the single network connection, that is a internet gateway. So that whenever we are configuring any application onto this subnet, they can easily get accessible to the internet via the internet gateway. We'll configure this internet gateway, NAT gateway in the upcoming videos. Just for now, we'll just focusing on the VPC. Now, if you want to create a new VPC, what you can do, you can just click on that create VPC. The resources, if you want to create VPC only, VPC and more, then it will ask you about the subnet, route tables and all these things. As of now, I'll just go with the VPC link, my VPC. Then I'll choose the CIDR block as a 10.0.0./16. So I'll in the next video I'll let you know about why I've chosen the 16, why should we choose the 24, why should we choose this 28. We'll discuss it. So just we'll have to provide the IPv4 for CIDR range and the tenancy, and just click on that create VPC. Now you see the VPC got created with the single route table and the CIDR range of this 16/16. Okay, inside the VPC there are also one more thing that we'll have to configure inside for the production, is that flow logs. So the flow logs are nothing but whatever the traffic is getting out from the VPC and the traffic is coming from the outside to the VPC, it will everything get logged in with the use of flow log. So there you can see the filter, accept, reject, all. We will have a separate video on that, how we can create a flow log and its use cases. Okay, but as of this video, it just focused on the VPC. Yeah, so I think this is all introduction and VPC. So this was all about the VPC's introduction.